Hi, Misha here, and recently I posted the video on the new Battlestar Galactica Cylon Raider from Blood and Chrome, which is issue 11 in Eaglemoss's diecast model collection. And in that video, I showed the original Raider from Galactica TOS, and this one here, the Raider from the Reimagined series, because the Blood and Chrome is an in-between and intermediate step. So I had them all on the table, and I thought I'm going to revisit the Reimagined Raider, because don't get me wrong, guys, I know me getting things in frame is, I'm not great at it. What can I do? I'm blind. Do what I can. But it seems like that video was particularly bad even for me, and it was one of the early ones that I tried doing. So since this was out, and since I had a few minutes, I thought I would just try again. Hopefully results are a little better. If not, sorry folks, this is kind of a big and oddly shaped model, so it is a little hard for me to get on camera. Well, as I said in the Blood and Chrome episode, the original Raider from the 1978 series, as well as 1980 Galactica, was a fighter bomber, kind of like a F-84, if you will. Which meant it wasn't as maneuverable or quick as the Viper, but on the other hand, it could deliver a punch and it could carry at least 3 crew, probably more in an emergency. But it had, some transportability, whereas a Viper was a very sleek one-man craft. Well, when they did the Reimagined series, their Raider here was a superiority fighter. Call it air superiority or space superiority, because it could operate in a vacuum or in an atmosphere. It's 29.3 feet long, thanks to these long wings. So a lot of its length is actually taken up by that. And it's 18.3 feet wide, so relatively narrow. It has 3 sublight engines in the back, kind of like a Viper. It also has an FTL, faster than light drive, which is, for a small craft, very efficient, very capable. It's said that the reason that Cylon FTLs are more effective than Colonials wasn't the actual jump hardware itself, but the fact that the Cylons could take advantage of computing software. Whereas, of course, the Colonials were very wary of computers, especially networked ones. This has 2 large forward-facing kinetic energy guns. As large as they are, I would classify them as cannon. Kind of like a modern 20 or 30 millimeter cannon on a fighter. It also has internal bays under the wings. Well, technically in the wings. They can carry conventional missiles, like anti-fighter missiles, or they can carry nuclear-tipped missiles to attack capital ships. That said, the Heavy Raider was what the Cylons employed if they really wanted to strike a heavy fortified target, but in a pinch, a standard Raider could deliver a decent punch as well. It's a very thin craft, only 4 to 5 feet thick in places, and that's because this is biomechanical, although really it's mostly an organic craft. It does not have an occupant, or at least not standard. So it's not piloted by a Cylon Centurion or a Cylon human form. Instead, it has a brain all its own, as well as a respiratory system, and presumably it eats or consumes nutrients. It's said in Battlestar Galactica that it's intelligent, kind of like a dog or a cat or a horse or something. So it has rudimentary intelligence, but like a lot of trained animals, it's very clever, very good at its job. These are also capable of resurrection, so they could learn from mistakes. That said, even though the fighter was capable, it didn't have as complicated or tactical thinking as most human pilots, at least until they grew a lot of experience. For example, Scar, the Raider known as Scar. But I think at first they were probably pretty simplistic, but with resurrection, they could afford to be. This seems to be a relatively new model. We don't see these in the original Cylon War. Instead, we see more of a mechanical Raider piloted by Centurions. This seems to be something developed quite recently before the attack on the colonies, and it's used throughout the series. This is the primary offense and defense for a Cylon base ship, base star. And there are a few variations as the models and CGI improve throughout the series over the 4-season run plus the miniseries. As for the model itself from Eaglemoss, this was issue 2 in their BSG collection, so very early on. It is a large model. It's still the biggest they've done. And these wings are entirely metal, which is neat. The cannon, of course, part of the engines, that's plastic polymer. Part of the underside is polymer. But this is a pretty hefty thing. But because it's so thin, even though it's large in some dimensions, in others, it's not. So even though it's very metal, it's not all that heavy. It's not lightweight, don't get me wrong, but it's not as heavy as you might expect. And it comes with a typical Eaglemoss stand. This one, since it's a first issue, it sits on the stand okay, as you see, but since it kind of clips on and has the little head, it's not the most stable. I think if they'd made this later on in the series, they would have made a slightly better stand, but it's not the worst. It doesn't just come tumbling off, but it's not the most secure either. For anyone a fan of the series, this is a must. I mean, next to the Viper, the Galactica, it is the #1 Cylon craft, and I mean, what's the point of having a shelf full of Vipers if you don't have some enemy? When this was kind of our only Cylon ship, it was a bit odd, but now that we have 2 other Raiders and 2 base ships, base stars, we have a fleet of 5 Cylon ships, and it's kind of nice to see their design aesthetic. Next up, I'll be showing you issue 12, which is the reimagined base ship, base star. And I think my next one I'd like to see would be the Heavy Raider, or kind of an odd choice, but maybe the big Raider, the Advanced Raider from Galactica 1980. I don't know, something a little odd and off the wall. But I am happy that the Colonial ships are getting some companionship. As of right now, we have 7 Colonial and 5 Cylon models in the collection, which I think is a good ratio. I think most of us still prefer the human ships just because they're very neat. What I like about the Battlestar Galactica ships especially from the Reimagined series, they have a certain real-world aesthetic. I'm not saying they're completely believable, they're definitely fiction, but when they design them, they at least try to make something that could potentially exist in the real world. So I appreciate that. Well, guys, I hope I got more on camera this time. If I did, great. If not, I appreciate you tolerating me. If you could, like, share, and subscribe. And also check out some of my other videos. I've been trying to cover these BSG ships since they're doing a great job with them. And there's not a lot of talk online. Although most people I know that have them are very happy with them. So, you know, if you're a fan of the show, why not? Well, this is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon next time.